visitor room, and this is where we bring all our visitors into this room and we show them a 12-minute DVD on the big screen, and it's called The Spark That Ignited the World. It gives you a good introduction to oil history, and for those who aren't familiar with it, certainly relates to all the displays in the museum. What we have here is a profile of southwestern Ontario, and it shows you 1,400 meters into the ground. We also talk about, these are the gum beds. The gum beds were here in the original, so no one particularly wanted to be here with this sticky, gooey substance on top. The first well was only 14 feet deep. It was hand dug, and then once they had better equipment, then they could drill deeper. And so this level here is 380 feet. So the wells that are still existing, there's still over 500 wells that produce oil, and this is their level, 380. So Mr. Williams found the oil, he retrieved the oil, he refined the oil, he marketed the oil, transported it. So it was an integrated system. So it's the first commercial oil field because he was able to have an integrated system of working with that oil. You can see in here that's one of the medals he received 2 medals. One for being the first to find crude oil, and then also to refine it. So that's one of the gold medals from the international exhibition that he received.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know they gave out medals for that kind of thing.
They did. They had all kinds of minerals that they would take to the exhibitions, and they would be judged. So Mr. Williams had that hand-dug hole 14 feet into the ground. That was in 1858. And then in 1862, Mr. Shaw came to town because everybody, of course, wanted to be here. Once they heard of that first well, everybody drifted into town and wanted to see if they could come and strike oil and perhaps get rich. Lots did, lots didn't. But Mr. Shaw decided to drill deeper down into the ground. And so he used the spring pole method of drilling. And that's what this little schematic here shows you. You have a spring pole here, and onto here would be a sharpened piece of metal that would have been used for a bit. It was man-powered. The man would stand here and throw his weight onto this treadle and do this with his weight. So each time he did that, it would thrust the spring pole down, and that sharpened piece of metal that they used for a bit would thrust against the rock, and it would just be chop, chop, chop. So it took him 6 months, but he was successful. He finally did get his gusher.
And I noticed there's this picture in here. Is it what an oil gusher would be like way back in 1862?
That's correct. It would be. It's just a mixture of oil. This is oil and water in the oil area of this vicinity. So it would be, like I say, it's just like shaking a can of pop. You get a lot of pressure in there, and when you put the cap off, everything shoots up to. So there'd be a lot of pressure under there. These are the 3-pole derricks. Remember, this was a new business. The oil strike here was new. It was a new industry. There were no tools. There was no equipment, basically, so they just had to use what they had on hand. The area was all trees and all swamp, so they made some equipment. So that's what this is. It's a 3-pole derrick. They just take 3 nice straight poles, put it over the well, because if you think about it, you had to have a way, if you were drilling down in there, at some point you may have to sharpen your bit or change the bit, so you had to have something for leverage. You couldn't just stand there and pull it up. So if they had this over the well for maintenance, there's a pulley up here. And so, of course, the horse could be hooked over here, and once he pulled, you could get the bit up out of the well, and then you could change it or sharpen it. So it was strictly a maintenance type of equipment. John Henry Fairbank came here in 1861. He actually came as a surveyor because things were booming here in Oil Springs, so he came to survey some land. However, he got interested in the oil business himself and actually went into producing oil as well. And one method that he devised, as I was saying before, all the equipment in the industry was new, so they needed new equipment. So he came up with a very efficient method for pumping oil. It's for the jerker line system. And instead of having a steam engine at each and every well and having that expense or trouble with moving it, he devised the method of putting one central steam engine or power source and then hooking up the jerker lines to all the wells. So one steam engine ran several wells. So the industry evolved very quickly, and we certainly needed equipment. There were no tractors or cranes at the time, so we always had an oil wagon so they could hook a horse to it, a horse draw it to each well. They had all their cables, throw all their tools in there. It was quite a feat just to get around some of these muddy oil fields. This is a real heavy clay soil, so you can imagine as many times as they got stuck moving their oil wagon from place to place. But the industry did evolve very quickly. Once we had the 3-pole derrick, and then once we had steam power, then we could have the 4-pole derrick. So you got more power and a little more depth that you could drill using the steam engine. So this is the Canadian pole drilling rig. It's, as they say, a 4-pole rig, similar, same objective as the 3-pole for maintenance, and that it could be used for drilling and for pumping. But you would have your steam engine on this side, this walking beam in here, and then the bit would be on the end of the walking beam. So instead of the man doing his treadle pumping, you would have the steam engine that would be your power source.
Did you bring this anywhere else other than just Canada?
They did. When the drillers from Oil Springs and Petrolia in this area went around the world, this is the type of equipment that they took with them because they could knock down the derrick part and dismantle it and unhook it from the engine, from the steam engine. They could put it on a ship, send it to wherever country they were going to drill, and then once they got there, then they could reassemble it. And using some of the local help where they were, they could put it together, and then they would have some equipment.
What was so special, you may ask, about the Lambton men? Oh, why not the Americans? The British, for that matter. Well, it's quite simple, really. If you want to get the job done right, well, there's nothing for it than to send the Canadians. If you're opening up a new world field in an undeveloped part of the world, you want an experienced driller, of course. But you also wanted someone who could get involved with the natives and be inventive. Be a problem solver. That's why the Canadians were in such demand. Take William Gillespie. Now there's a man you can count on in a pinch.
Oil Springs Gallery. This is the social history of Oil Springs. At first, it was just a few people here, but once the discovery of oil was made here in Oil Springs, everybody wanted to come. So in this room, we just try to illustrate how the little village grew and how prosperity made the village grow. So we have just some artifacts that people have donated to us. This is the International Drillers Gallery. The oil from the local Lambton County Oil Heritage District gained their expertise here in Lambton County, but once they were well known, they became requested around the world, and they went to 87 different countries around the world to explore for and help drill for oil. And just like most of us who travel, they like to bring back mementos and souvenirs to their families. So in this room are the artifacts of souvenirs that they brought back. There are some odd and unique items. They were perhaps purchased or maybe traded or given to these men. And you can imagine them bringing them back by boat, by ship. They were traveling by ship because, of course, no planes. So it took them, a long time to get to the country that they were going to. We have one diary over there, and it took the man 6 months on a ship to get to the place where he was drilling. So it was no easy task, but at the time, people from Lambton County didn't travel too far from home, so it was an exciting time, and they could make good money as well. So there was an enticement for them to go. But they were in demand. They had expertise, and that's what people were requesting them to go around the world and help them with their oil development.
Interesting. So what are some of your favorite items here in the International Drillers Gallery?
Well, I do like, there's a spider over here, and I like to point that out to the children when we do a tour, because we think of our little spiders, but it's a great big tarantula. And I also like to point out some of the snake skins, because we think of our little garter snakes, but when you think of a snake skin like here in the corner, you can only imagine these drillers coming from this area, seeing these huge spiders and these huge snakes.